Or are you okay? It's okay. Fabulous. Right. Here we go. Now, we hear so much about digital sovereignty, what it is, how we can obtain it, how we should nurture it, how we should invest in it. I think it's time that we actually sort of get to grips with, first of all, what it is and how to look after it. And I have to say, I'm absolutely delighted to have one of the authors of the really big reports that was discussed at Davos earlier this year with me, the academic and the partner in the Think Tank Leaders Hub, Tomasz Klekowski. Tomasz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So let's talk about digital sovereignty. Now, I was looking at the way that you describe digital sovereignty in the report. It's the capacity of a state or community to independently and autonomously shape its day-to-day functioning and long-term development in the digital domain. And you go on to talk about this. What I want to know from you is, if we're looking at the EU and digital sovereignty, have we left this just too late?
Well, it's obviously it takes a lot of time to really strengthen digital sovereignty. The question is if the states, if nations could wake up earlier and start building this earlier. I'm not so sure. It's very easy to say from perspective of history that we should have started earlier.
Mm.
But in fact, if you looked at the development of digital economy, mm, uh, you have the sequence of years of great collaboration. You have opening of China market, you have expansion of PC standard, you have companies from all over the world under the umbrella of globalization doing businesses here in Europe, and European companies going abroad. So for very many years, the globalization was like a main engine for digital world development. Only when we started seeing the problems with globalization, then the whole machine started cracking. First, we saw events the problem with the industrialization of the central part of US. Then we had China starting their own policy, looking at becoming more and more independent. Then Russia started violating international law, and we started seeing the whole world going polarized and going into different directions, and businesses didn't want to admit that it will have profound influence on the way how they do business,
Mm.
because the globalization was and the global market is the perfect environment for businesses. This is the reason why very lately we realized that there is actually no choice, and the couple of big economical ecosystems will have to define how they are going to operate in their own digital sphere, because the continuation of the current ecosystem development trajectory is not longer possible.
If you if you look at how we have, and exactly what you've just said, the way that the world has formed and we have formed within it, and businesses have traditionally operated and seen that as being a good path forward. Now, when we look at digital sovereignty, so many of the facets, the underlying infrastructure of our digital world uh, is globalized, are globalized. So I guess my question to you is, have we left it too late to reclaim that base infrastructure and make ourselves sovereign when it comes to the digital world? Is it too late to, or are we going to have to start again? Or can we remold what we have?
So actually, it's going to be a process, right? And the process is going to be very long. And I do not expect, and actually, it's even not so important if we start now or in 2 years from now, unless we reach the desired stage, which we must, mm, uh, from building the foundations for our digital independence, or actually digital autonomy, because the problem is that it's not about one or two spot activities. It's not about a small number of projects. It is really profound change in the way how we think about digitalization and the whole digital economy. And basically, this is going to take us 10, 15 years. It's not something which we will fix within 2, 3 quarters.
No, sure,
So
sure.
having the perspective of 15 years, we need to first of all understand what needs to be done. We need to be patient and we need to start working on foundations, not only on spot projects.
15 years, I think, when we look at such a changing world and a challenging world at the moment, 15 years is a very long time when you are
It is.
when you are looking at things that change so quickly and how our digital culture is embedded into everything we do. So look down 15 years down the line, it is a lot can happen in that amount of time. Go.
So basically, yes, it's 15 years if you look at some specific elements of the digital ecosystem. So when I talk about such long periods, I mean, for example, the segment of development and production of semiconductors. And there 15 years it's a long time perspective, but not so long. To build the big chip factory, you need several years to develop the architecture, to test it, to make it into production, you need several years. And if you take under consideration that in Europe, all of the countries need to come to the same page, need to figure out what jointly should be done, it's also going to take some time because reaching consensus in Europe is a long and tiresome process.
Well, then let's look at policy, because quite often it will be the policies that tries to find that middle ground. So when it comes to our policy makers, are they heading in the right direction? Do you feel? Do they, first of all, do they understand the importance of digital sovereignty? Do you think they do?
So in the course of last year, I've seen a lot of progress,
Right.
and I can right now hear the right priorities. I can hear that the debate is going into the right direction from perspective of specific industry areas or the layers of technology stack which we are discussing. So there is a discussion about Chips Act 2.0. There is the discussion about open source software, about development of European sovereign cloud. There is a lot of discussion about sovereign AI European models. That's absolutely right topics for the discussion. However, unfortunately, this is not enough because we are defining in which areas we should work, but we haven't, and we decide about and we define some goals, but we haven't discussed how are we going to get there.
Mm.
And as you said, yeah, 15 years it's a very long time, and it's absolutely impossible to set one solid plan which you are going to execute in the course of 15 years. In the current world, which demonstrates the huge vitality, actually we need to have a different approach to planning. It needs to be an agile planning. So basically, what is necessary is to build some capabilities, to prepare some foundations from perspective of understanding what needs to be done, from perspective of building right competencies, from perspective of building the perception of cost acceptance for some for some activities. Maybe there are some trade-offs which we need to accept. Then we need to prepare the specialists. Then we need to prepare the public. We need to prepare the users. This is going to take a long time, and we need to govern the strategy. There is element of the also of the policy making, and then if we have these foundations properly built, then we may first execute many projects. Second, we can change these projects in more agile way.
Mm. But it's interesting when you talk of 15 years, um, at several electoral cycles. This is the problem, and it's almost what you're suggesting. It has to be done in such a way that it can be agile enough when views change. I just want to. You talked about data sovereignty, sovereign data clouds, and all of this. But it strikes me that we're having these conversations when both of us know that the really big tech companies are not European. I mean, we know that, and unless something radically changes in the next few years, that's still going to be the case.
So basically, and this is one of the basic requirements. We need to partner with these companies in the course of that fundamental change.
So you wouldn't then seek to replace the big tech companies with a European version of.
Well, try to imagine how such process could
Mm,
work. Very quickly it would end up with a lot of conflicts,
yeah.
maybe trade wars, and that's that. Given the volatility which we have in the world, I don't think that this is the right approach. We need to find the new point of balance. And these companies, these huge technology corporations, they also need to understand that the world has changed. And what was possible under globalization umbrella is not possible any longer. So it's the mutual responsibility to find the new point of equilibrium where basically they can do business here in Europe. However, they need to respect some necessities and some needs which Europe has.
Do you do you think that is possible? Do you think that's likely, or do you think that's actually a really tricky thing
it
to
it
get
it
right?
will be difficult process. There will be a
Mm,
lot of conflicts, and kind of the conflict management will be part of building the digital
right.
sovereignty.
Yeah.
But because the companies don't want to leave the money on the table, they will
Mm.
be trying to protect their profits. They will be trying to protect their markets. They invested billions of euros and dollars into development of these markets. This is the reason why we should collaborate as much as possible. And then in the report, I'm writing like the three scenarios. Two of them are kind of the corner cases. One says, well, we leave it as it is. It's too late. We can't change anything. The other one is here we go on full scale, cutting off any connections with the whole digital ecosystem and replace everything possible with European versions. And then I think that there is the third option, which is actually something which I believe has more merit. It is thinking of these sovereignty capabilities as kind of the backup, kind of
Right.
the
Right.
something which we build, we have right to build, we must build in case of something which we can't predict, because we need to be able to maintain the infrastructure, to take care of resilience of that infrastructure, and we need to invest into it, and the big corporations should help us to build that resilience, because at the end of the day this is also in their interest. Now when we are building the kind of the backup plan and kind of the backup power supply, we do not need to switch everything
Mhm.
off. We may continue maybe with some changes, but the business with the big corporations. And next to this, we are building these additional capabilities, which will make us more resilient, more independent, and then we will be able basically better shape the collaboration based on the mutual benefits.
We've talked about policymakers and regulation. I want to talk now about an a category of people now that you've already mentioned, and that's just normal users, and that's getting inside the culture and the mindset. First of all, do you believe that there is a desire with digital users for digital sovereignty?
So if you ask people for the declarations,
Yeah.
Absolutely yes. And actually, last week there was a research published in Poland where 70% of people said they would pay more for sovereign solutions. That's the declaration. I would like to check this because
Yeah, and
basically
indeed,
I
how
believe
much
that
more? Yeah,
when it
yeah,
comes to spending of real money, this can be a little bit different. But it shows that the topic is the people are aware of the challenge,
yes,
and they understand something needs to be done, and that's very good. And basically, general public and users, this is one group. But for the time being, majority of the discussions about sovereignty, these are the discussions of the policymakers
mm,
and lawyers. First of all, we need to make digital sovereignty the topic for engineers and the topic for business people. And then, when we include properly these two big groups into the discussion, together with the lawyers, together with the policymakers, then we may start building the good structure of discussions
mm.
for digital sovereignty, and we may discuss the right strategy and then execute the right strategy. And here again, there will be a very important role for preparation of the users,
Yeah.
because when we say, well, we would like, for example, to have different digital services in Europe, so we need to prepare people to use these services. They need to know the applications. It is like speaking different languages, right? Right now, people speak in the terms of, I don't know, the Googlies or Microsoftians. Now we need to build another language. And if people learn one another language, which will be digital sovereignty, like our digital Esperanto, then we may ask people to switch. But before they get the basic commands in the new language, we just can't expect them to jump into the deep water and to start using something which they even don't know how it works.
Tomasz, I'm quite interested though in this sort of, what comes first, because you can't almost expect that someone willingly changes their digital language, I'll use your analogy, unless that language is going to be as good or as fun or as easy to use as what they've already been doing so. And therefore, any digital systems have to be almost at the same level as what people had before
Or
they move over.
you're right. There are two things. So first of all, we should prepare people.
Hmm.
Secondly, if there will be trade-offs, and I can expect that there will be trade-offs at the very beginning. So if there are trade-offs, people need to understand why they should accept them, and this is part of the education, and this is the reason why I really call for like inclusion of digital sovereignty and like digital geopolitics courses into technical education
Yeah.
of engineers. This should be also discussed in media, and it shouldn't be about two or three speeches of the politicians. It well, we need to, the way how we teach geography, the way how we teach biology, we should also teach people about the modern world.
I mean, there's certainly an appetite, even more so over the last few years, to have an understanding of that resilience, and to know exactly what systems you have and where they are coming from, and a far more transparency. There's certainly an appetite for
Mm.
that. I'm interested whether you, when you look at digital sovereignty, whether you think of it merely as being or totally as being a public sector thing,
That's,
infrastructure, or whether it is public and private together.
so actually, I look at this from, or I split the discussion about sovereignty into three areas. One area is the infrastructure, This is primarily the public infrastructure, public services, but also the military infrastructure, where the state should have full control over the military systems they use.
So full sovereignty for public,
Full sovereignty for military.
for military. Okay.
Then for public, it depends, but definitely good degree of sovereignty for some areas. But there are two other areas which go broader than public sector. The one is the one element of the sovereignty. It is the protection of societal values which we believe in, democratic processes, and education and development of minors. And this part, and also the data protection, the privacy. So the value protection is part of the digital sovereignty. How we may influence and build the framework and foundations for protecting these values is absolutely critical. And here I'm talking about things like fighting disinformation. Here, these are things like intrusions or interference with elections. Here, I'm talking about things like control over the way how minors use social media. And then there is one another area which is closer to the commercial world. Now, this is the area of economy, and countries should have, and the state should have, greater level of influence and control, and they should be independent in the way how they, for example, set taxes. The other thing is companies should have the fair rules of exchange with the big partners. So we should be able to avoid things like vendor locking. And then this is very relevant for businesses. So I would say that the digital sovereignty is important for businesses and for the economy. It's important for the society, and it is obviously important for the state from perspective of the state services and state infrastructure.
I think there's so much to this. As soon as you start to think about it, you realise just on how many different levels and how many different facets that this would actually impact. But Tomasz, it's been so interesting to talk to you and to get your views on digital sovereignty. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation and for a great conversation.
Lovely. Thank you.